Okay, we move to Mike.
Thank you very much. I see the timing is just about to start. Okay. I'm taking a bit of a risk because I'm putting a slightly contrarian view about a clash of globalization and local culture. In order to make sure I stick to time, I'm going to take it from a paper, so please bear with me for this. It is only 15 minutes, so please stay, because there's a really great speaker to follow me. What I want to do is make a very simple point and perhaps raise a question or two. And I think the best way is to use a city as an example. I shall use a world city that's facing population growth, fairly rapid urbanization, and that's feeling the pressures of globalization. Could be many different cities, but I've chosen to look at Bangkok. This talk is more of a metaphor and a narrative about cities than simply about Bangkok. It's just a vehicle to tell a story. Now, bringing identity back does have an assumption that it has already been lost through globalization. And I wonder actually how true this is. Of course, there are plenty of truisms about the ubiquity and spread of globalization, so many it's hardly worth quoting, but here you go. Whether you walk through the streets of New York or Nairobi, Beijing or Buenos Aires, globalization has introduced a level of commercial culture which is eerily homogeneous. The glittering air-conditioned shopping malls are interchangeable. Young people drink the same soft drinks, wear the same identical branded clothing, play the same computer games, and so on. And of course, the argument has gone as far as the physical look of our cities. Homogenized, with similar central business districts, high-rise, the corporate headquarters, the banks, the financial institutions. It could be anywhere environment. Globalization has come to be argued is equated completely with the loss of local identity. Well, walking around in Bangkok, I was actually stopped dead by seeing something that was unusual. It wasn't just the McDonald's, with its large model of a red-headed clown giving a crude gesture of the Thai Y of greeting. No, it was its product. It was the Mac Thai sticky rice roast pork burger, a product claimed to have locally sourced ingredients and to cater for Thai tastes. So, what of that much vaunted ubiquity of McDonald's, that symbol of globalization, the all-conquering products that are the same everywhere in the world? In fact, so much the same everywhere in the world that the Big Mac has been used as an indicator by economists of the health of world currency. It's called purchasing power parity, the Big Mac index, or Burgernomics. So what of globalization's all-conquering imperial reach? If McDonald's bends to local and regional tastes, what exactly is going on? Well, there's another level to this story, literally another level to this story. When I stopped to ponder the sticky rice roast pork burger, and it's not very nice and it's very difficult to say, I was looking down on McDonald's from a height, from one of Bangkok's skywalks, and let me explain. The second thing that Bangkok is most notorious for is its traffic congestion, with lengthy traffic jams, journeys taking often more than 2 hours or more, pollution, general chaos on limited road space. 20 years ago, they recognized they needed a solution and decided to build a mass rapid transit system. It was opened in 1999 to coincide with the King's 72nd birthday, officially known as the elevated train in commemoration of His Majesty the King's 6th cycle birthday. In Thailand, a cycle is 12 years. Well, it's commonly called the Sky Train. This is a massive, raised, concrete structure, some 4 or 5 stories above the ground, constructed over the existing streets, so it had no impact on the layout and form of the city, keeping its traditional configuration. Not a thing of beauty, but it has an undeniable presence, and also it has an identity all of its own. The technology is global. The funding was through a local company, although no doubt with a vast amount of global capital. And just for your information, it's a system of 2 lines, 30 stations, about 30 kilometers of track. Since it opened, in 5 years after it opened, an underground was inaugurated, and that has 3 interchanges between 5 stories up in the air and 5 stories below in an underground system. It's quite a way to get there. And then, 2 years ago, another elevated line was connecting the SkyTrain to the international airport some 28 kilometers away. But it's the SkyTrain and what it connects to that grabs the attention. At its heart, that is to say, about a third of its stations, it links directly to an international, globalized world at high level via 27 sky bridges. These connect to major hotels, some 75 plus, huge shopping malls, a dozen or more, entertainment, conference venues, and commercial buildings. And 3 of its stations at the centre are further linked by the skywalk, slung underneath the tracks, so that even more sky bridges can be built in between the stations to connect to other global buildings. And so powerful is this global pull that many of the hotels that don't have a skywalk link or aren't very close by have free transport, usually a little tuk-tuk, they call them, rickshaws, 3-wheelers, making a lot of noise, to whisk guests from their international hotel to the globalized world of the SkyTrain. And it is a globalized world. It is the other, apart from, but physically within Bangkok. Up there, above the city, are the same shops, the same style of international hotels, all strangely familiar, and that could be, indeed, almost anywhere, reinforcing the homogeneity of globalization and a certain loss of local identity. The fast, frequent, smooth, air-conditioned transport speeds above the streets and traffic of Bangkok. From air-conditioned train to air-conditioned shopping mall, there's no need to experience the discomfort of climate, or of traffic, or of the poor. Because, of course, not only is it a globalized world, but it is a world that excludes. You are literally above it all. Down below, you enter the other world, Thailand and Bangkok, and it is a world away. Below are the ground floors of the very same buildings that are connected to the sky bridges up above. They can be easily accessed at street level, but it's not the same. The streets, as you know, in Asian cities are crowded and vibrant with life. Street traders, hawkers, food stalls, even mobile restaurants vie with the traffic congestion, pollution and noise. Getting around down there is slow, crowded and hot, but everywhere is connected. And there's a bewildering choice, from not too expensive to very cheap, from the relatively safe to the incredibly dangerous. That's the taxis, the buses, the tuk-tuks, and the motorcycle taxis, which are great fun, but you take your life into your hands if you get on one. So within a small radius, what do you find? You find the night markets, you find the food stalls, you find the restaurants of all varieties and all prices, apartments, traditional housing, temples, different ethnic areas, and of course the first thing that Bangkok is most notorious for. It's inclusive, varied, diverse, and above all, alive and interesting. And yet, despite that diversity, Thai culture prevails in obvious ways. In many corners and spaces, there'll be a small shrine with food and flowers placed there every day. Temples are interspersed among the new buildings and are magnets that make no concessions to the global world above. And of course, global culture is also there. Outside the shopping malls, almost everything you can buy within them, you can buy outside for next to nothing from the street traders. The expertise in faking goods is awesome, and it happens very fast. To all appearances, you have 2 different worlds existing side by side, or in this narrative, one above the other. Here, buildings inhabit the same space, The same street pattern, the same form. Above is the air-conditioned global world with its own homogeneous identity. Below is the untidy reality of local culture, and above all, its local identity. So returning to the theme of this session, bringing back identity and the impact of globalization and regionalism. Of course, it has a huge impact. Global finance, technology, built Bangkok's SkyTrain and other rapid transit. Many buildings that line the streets, the high-rise, the shopping malls, the goods, the products within them, the banks and global HQ could not have been constructed that way without it. It happens and it's fairly unstoppable. But apart from their height and superficial style, globalization has not affected the physical form of Bangkok. The SkyTrain, the example I'm using, follows the pattern of the existing streets, not the other way round. And it doesn't really matter what the buildings are like, or whether they're global or international in style, or whether they have a regional feel, or even if they're regenerated. The streets, the spaces, the urban environment is inhabited and overwhelmed by the local, by Thai culture and behavior, sometimes influenced by the global, but having an intense local identity. Looking down at McDonald's from the skywalk, and also at a temple 50 meters away, the two worlds coexist. Temple makes no concessions. The street vendors make and sell offerings of flowers and incense. The ceremonies and rituals are there for all to see. The identity is Thai, traditional and special. It could not be anywhere. No. It's McDonald's that has made the concession with its sticky rice roast pork burger. Despite its efforts to bend to Thai cultures and tastes, it's comfortingly empty. So the two worlds, the global and the local, exist side by side, sometimes interacting, sometimes separate. One can't exist without the other. But it is not, as the truism suggests, that globalization is always the winner, always thrusting the local aside. Nor is it true that everywhere has been made to look the same. Whilst globalization produces buildings and global businesses, it is the local people and their culture that makes the city, and makes Bangkok what it is. It is this that gives its identity. It's local, perhaps regional, and it could not be anywhere else. So I'm not sure about bringing back identity. After all, who is to bring it back? And whose interpretation of culture or image might it be? No, I suggest it's not been lost, but it has evolved. Identity is mediated by those who use their city. It is their culture, their imagination, creativity and enterprise that mould it to become their own. And I wonder if the same can be told of other cities.
Thank you very much, Mike.